Yo, 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 welcome to Crate 808. And today we have a very special guest on board, musician, journalist, writer, podcasting legend, and author. Shawn Setaro is back in Crate 808 Towers for I don't know how many times we've had you on, Shawn, but it feels like quite a few now, my man.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. It's always a pleasure to be on the show. I'm thrilled to be back, and I'm very thrilled to be talking about the Coup. So this is going to be fun.
It is. This is going to be double fun for me. The Coup, we're talking 1998, Steal This Album, but we're also going to be talking about your new book, Dummy Boy, Tekashi 6ix9ine, and the 9 Trey Gangsta Bloods. Man, there's a lot to go in, but as usual, Shawn, least hip-hop thing in the last 24 hours. What have you got, my man?
Wow. I knew this was coming, and I really maybe should have prepped harder. I would say that probably the least hip-hop thing that I've done in the last 24 hours is watched what I'm told is one of the classic episodes of the original Star Trek. As a kind of like wind down, late evening before bed thing.
Yo, quick reminder, if you're enjoying the show, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button so you'll be kept up to date with all that we're doing. And also, man, get involved in the YouTube comments. Man, we love hearing from you fellow hip-hop heads. We love nerding out. So bring those takes and just bring that flavour, man, and we might even shout you out on the show. So yes, appreciate all the support. Now, back to the episode.
Yeah. The episode with the Romulans. I forget the title of it. I'm by no means an expert, but people who are experts tell me that's one of their favorite episodes of the original series. So
what drove this Star Trek love? Like, are you doing a marathon, or are you just
we periodically been watching episodes from the original series just because it's a sort of hole in my education, and it's a sort of relatively light thing to kind of wind down on. Nothing too bad ever happens that's not resolved. And also we tried to watch a sitcom, and the streaming service wouldn't let us, so we had to make another choice. Our go-to, wife and I's kind of go-to end of night sitcom recently has been The Nanny. But we were unable to watch that last night. So
nightmare.
Had to go with something else.
Nightmare. This is what I love about you, man. Everything's in it. You just said there, I had that something missing in my education. Some people watch TV just to switch off. This man here, no. I want to make sure I've got the Star Trek, a little bit of the lexicon in my education. That's why I love you, man. This is why I love you. This is amazing. But we are going to go into the Coup, right? A band that needs to be talked about more, probably, I would say. But if anything, this album you've brought to the table for me, mate, there's not many times I get to dance around the house, fist in the air, screaming, "I want to piss on your grave." And if there's anything,
one of the album's highlights for sure. One of the album's highlights.
If there's anything to come out of this album, if people haven't heard this album, 1, go out there, check it, and 2, get in the comments, let us know what you think to it if you have. But Shawn, for you, why was this on the list for you to come talk about, and what is it about the Coup that really attracts you to them?
Sure. So there are a number of things that I really love about the Coup and about this record, but I would say that it can be difficult to rap about politics in a way that's engaging and in a way that doesn't sound like, I'm here at a rally and here's a guy rapping about exactly what we're here protesting at the rally, right? It can be very easy to get bogged down in, specifics and kind of have it be the message is sort of more important than the music. And that's never the Coup's bag. I think Boots would argue that he fell into that trap on his first album, but then quickly jumped over it. I, actually like that first album a lot, but, I'll say that it's it's music that engages with radical politics and is also fun, right? It uses rhyming and humor and storytelling and emotion and all of the things that rap does so well, done by, an expert rhymer, but it's also funky and it's also in this very specifically Bay Area kind of funk rap tradition. And it's fun to listen to, and the politics are good. You can't beat that.
Yeah, absolutely. That you touched on something there about Kill My Landlord, and I went back and listened to that, and the fact that tracks on there like funk, like that track funk is so good, and yet it doesn't marry the two things up as well as this. So I'm glad you said that, because it feels like, you listen to Rage Against the Machine, or you listen to folk music like Phil Oakes or someone like that. The message is very much like at a level. I mean, Tom Morello would argue it isn't, but it is right up there. But I would say this album, it's like, what did I think the other day? It was like, I was listening to, Underdogs is an amazing track. There's so many great tracks on here, but I think it was the one with Dell, the Funky Homo Sapien, Repo Man.
Repo Man, yeah, the Repo Man Sings For You, I think.
That's it. And I was listening to that again, and I was like, the beauty of this album for me is it's kind of what you said. The message isn't like hitting me over the head, but then I realized, the message for them is just their everyday life. Like their everyday life is what this socialist Marxist like kind of ethos is embedded in. So basically, instead of him going on and talking about Lenin and Karl Marx, it's more about, no, my shit is getting repossessed and we don't have any money and we're all underdogs and stuff like that. And I thought he marries that up like better than most albums. So yeah,
it's that, and it's also like there's the step after that, right? Which is, stuff is bad, I'm suffering, you're suffering, my TV's being repossessed, or, whatever he kind of lays out. And this isn't going to change until we act collectively to, control the stuff we're making.
Yo, us here at the Crate 808 podcast have kicked off our Patreon. So if you don't know what Patreon is, it's a platform where you can go and for a small donation, you can help support us make more hip hop content for you. Go on to patreon.com/Crate808 and you can check out all the little payment options you've got there. You can check out the 2 new episodes you'll be getting every month, live chats with us guys, just to rap nerd out with you guys. We're going to go into some wide-ranging episodes, delving into the work of the Wu-Tang Clan, MF Doom and Jay Dilla. So get it locked if you want that new granular look at hip-hop. So go to our payment tiers on Patreon, big up yourselves. If you choose to support us, thank you so much. I will give you a personalised shout out on the show, and we shall catch you in one of these live rooms, and let's get this community going. So spread the word. Much love for your time, and peace out. Boom.
So I always appreciated that it's not, that there is that element as well, that it sort of points towards, there's the and this is changeable by, us working together.
Yeah. I love that. Just that idea of it, the collectiveness of it. For you then, going back, give me a bit of context to this album. Like for you, when did you discover Boots really and the Coup?
Sure. So let's see. I would guess I discovered Boots because a friend of mine sort of hit me to them and lent me actually a cassette of the first record, which I never ended up giving back. So sorry, Evan, if you're hearing this. That was some years after that record was released. This would have been, maybe late 90s or early 2000s. So they were a few albums in by that point. So I kind of went back and caught up, and I think Party Music was probably the first one that I kind of bought as contemporaneously with it coming out. And that obviously was 2001. But by that point I had, caught up on their back catalog.
Yeah.
One of the things I loved about them was that every record was different. You know, there were different sounds, different styles, different approaches, you know, pretty dramatically, I would say, on each record up through, you know, even up through Sorry to Bother You, through the album that preceded the movie of that name by some years, but still. Yeah, so that's kind of my initial introduction to them. I've seen them perform, you know, a bunch of times over the years. Got to interview Boots back in 2012, which was a great experience. Yeah, it was a little unnerving because I was, you know, a big fan. So it's, you know, met him next door to the venue he was playing at, and you know, set up a microphone and just kind of went for it. But you know, I think it turned out well. Yeah, and it has been just you know, I've been following them for a long time now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's been, you know, it's been amazing. We can maybe get in later to his film career, but I think you can hear on this record that him getting into film was natural. You know, there's several songs in this record that are almost a suite that are connected sort of by skits. And, you know, so that by the time I actually saw a movie of his, I was like, oh, this is like, you know, one of his suites on these Coup albums where you have a bunch of songs connect, you know, a bunch of things connected, like the humor is similar, the storytelling similar. You know, it was that movie, Sorry to Bother You, was recognizably him if you knew the Coup's music. Yeah.
So I bet you were really hyped when that come out, because obviously you had the background.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. And I think I do love one thing that there isn't enough of, I think, in hip hop nowadays is just absurdism. Like that album, the film is very much absurdist, but tracks on here, like Cars and Shoes, is very absurdist humor. And I was like, that's what I think really got me into Doom as well. I know we've talked about Doom before on the podcast. I feel like he had elements of that, but there was something about this album where I'm like, wow, like he lends himself to that humor. And then I was thinking about, you talked about their other albums and this album and the album titles, and Kill Your Landlord. I was like, brilliant. I mean, I had Arm & Hammer on the show this year and they were talking about, though, that whole thing has come around again. The cyclical nature of politics and, you know, cultural uprisings. Kill Your Landlord is still a thing in 2021, 2020. Genocide in Juice. If I'd heard that as a kid, I would have just, that automatically from the title, I'd have been like, that's got to be on my must listen. I didn't get that as a kid. And then this is Steal This Album, which I feel like is just one of the best like album titles out there. I just love the title. It kind of encapsulates everything.
It sets the record in a lineage, right? Because it's an homage to Abbie Hoffman, to Steal This Book. And so it kind of sets it in a world of radical and revolutionary politics from the album title onward.
Yeah.
So I always really love that. And in the same way that, you know, Boots will quote or interpolate a couple rap lyrics on this album, right? He does it with NWA or whatever. And I think a few other times as well. To set the album in kind of a hip hop tradition, right? He turns that, or it's Ice Cube, right? He says, Ice Cube on Gangsta, I think, an NWA song, he changes it to, you know, contesting 1, 2, 3, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of this record about like, yes, it's original in a lot of ways, but obviously he samples P-Funk in a very obvious way.
Yeah.
On the, you know, sort of the album's central song, like it's very much in a tradition.
Definitely. And that whole, like you said, the tradition of, I don't know, even the musicality of it. I just love the musicality of it, but tying everything down is the humanity of it. I think there's a very human like outlook to everything, which is, you know, what I was saying earlier. If we're looking at, we have these categories: hidden gems, most rewindable moments. But one of my categories I like to talk about is the 5 mic moments, the moments of like almost pure perfection on an album or from an artist. And I mean, we have to talk about me and the Jesus Pimp in a 79 Granada Last Night. Like, for you, for me, that's one of the apexes of Boots's career. For you, tell me how you feel about that song then and how you feel about it now.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is absolutely a highlight of the record, and yeah, maybe, you know, certainly of his career as well. And it just works on a bunch of levels, including some levels I didn't even realize until this week when I sort of looked at some stuff he had said about the song.
Yeah.
So here's the thing about message and writing, right? Mm-hmm. Is this song, according to Boots, there were sort of 2 parallel ideas that started the song. And one was theoretical. One was, I want to write a song about how sexism against women also hurts men's lives. Yes. Right? That's the theoretical basis of the song. But also the artistic genesis of it was the very first line, right? He was smiling like a vulture as he rolled up the horticulture. So that pops into Boots's head. That starts a question of, who is this character? Who would smile like a vulture? What does that mean? What does that person look like? And that started this character of Jesus the Pimp. So there's both, right? There's a point to it, but there's also like a very character-driven, detail-ridden storyline. And, you know, Boots is very open about that. He says, look, you know, if I told you what happened in the song, it wouldn't be that interesting, but I put the details in there to draw you in and to sort of bring you into the world of the song, and ultimately to sell his point, right? To sell sort of the ideas and the conclusions of the song, right? And to sell his sort of central thesis. It's amazing. I will say the other thing about it that I don't think I even fully realized until maybe yesterday was I was looking at some stuff he had said about it, and he'd said, look, you know, not only is the song about, you know, overthrowing this sort of sexist pimp ideology, but it's also, to his mind, about, you know, Jesus also represents this idea of that killing the Jesus character represents Black folks being part of, this is his words, quote, Black folks being part of movements that have a class analysis as opposed to a bourgeois nationalist analysis.
Wow.
So basically he's saying, like, you know, it works on that level too, of like, you have to kill the kind of like respectable, you know, bourgeois idea, and you need to like join with people around you and, you know, look at the world for what it is, look at class relationships and, you know, see what's going on. So I didn't get that until I literally read him say it, but I think it works. You know, he's not, so yeah, it just works on so many levels, and it's an amazing story, right?
Yeah.
In just the way it's organized, how this idea of the computer metaphors, right? The micros, you know, one line that comes back and back again and sort of changes meaning each time is like, you know, don't be Microsoft, be Macintosh with a hard drive, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, it's funny when you first hear it, oh, soft, hard computers, you know, Microsoft, Mac, but kind of it changes meaning throughout the course of the song, so that, you know, by the final time you hear it, it's when he's kind of flipped the script on the Jesus character.
Double clicked.
Just an amazing piece of work.
Yeah, I was looking through it line by line the other day, and there's not one wasted line on that track. As in, everything is just so, well, it kind of equates to what you've just said, so deep. There's so much depth to it. It's very easy to go to novels and be like, this is one of the most novelistic songs I've heard. But more than just like the telling of the story, It's the complex, like the complex nature of all of it. He's not one to, it's not black and white, because there's even moments where I think the bit that really breaks my heart is that whole bit where it really encapsulates the cycle of trauma and tragedy and father figures and the male role model. And it's, he says something like, first it was a setup move and then it was the truth. His letters were the only friend that I had as a youth.
Right. Where he's writing to the Jesus character in jail after Jesus killed his mother. And he sort of starts out, oh, I'll write to him and I'll get him, I'll show him and take revenge. But then but he actually believes it. And he says he falls into sort of Jesus's trap of mistreating women and being sexist, and, eventually overcomes that. But it's a very, and here's the thing is like the writing in there, right? Because how does he say it? He like actually sort of spells out the letter, right? He says, uses words like, 12 years old, I wrote him, quote, I want to be a pimp, comma, you accidentally killed my mom, no play-ation points, a bitch's exclamation point, right? And he doesn't go back to that device, but he really sells the idea of he's writing a letter by verbalizing the punctuation marks.
That's mad. Yeah, I didn't even think like that. That's so true. He's actually exactly. And then you said there about his son then calling him a dick, but there was another one where he talks about it's the way you're describing things. And this is why I love Ray. This is why I love Ghostface. They say things that are indescribable at times. Oh, what a great way to put it. He says something about ambulance flies reminds me of midnight in a dope fiend's eyes. And you're like, what? Like, how? For you to look from the inner point of view of a dope fiend means you must have been a dope fiend. Or there's just so complex. And that one song alone, even the video, and big up Roger something plays Rudy in Malcolm X, and the guy who plays Jesus in the video, and I was just like, that's another guy that needs a bit more shine. That guy, he was amazing, and in all the Spike Lee films, man, absolutely amazing. So but I was wondering if there were any, I know that track gets a lot of love generally, but if there were any like hidden gems where you feel like that one deserves a bit more love or a bit more shine. Were there any that came to you?
For sure, absolutely. I would say there's a couple. Definitely. I would say, for one thing, the Repo Man Sings for You, neither Boots nor R.I.P. Pam the Funkstress, the group's DJ, neither of them really liked the song that much.
Interesting.
But I love it. I think it's just it takes such a relatable image, right? The idea of the Repo Man, and really turns it into something about like class consciousness, how the banking system works.
Yeah.
And it's also just such a perfect use of Dell as this kind of like eerie, dangerous repo guy who's coming for you.
Yeah.
And just the way they use kind of the piano hook, first it's catchy, but then it's sort of eerie when the Repo Man is actually singing it. Like,
yeah. The la la
I think it's, I think that's just a really great song,
and really visual. Like you said earlier, you could tell he was going to be, and he is making these things visual. And as I said earlier, that is on the ground Marxism. That's not like lofty ideas. Again, this is actual functioning capitalism. And there's another thing that's funny about this. I was listening to it and thinking, how many communist rappers really are there? Like, I know Mortal Technique has his thing, but like, how many people really go in like this and really in a system that is inherently about putting people above everyone else in wealth? You think hip hop is all about that, lifting one man up in a capitalist system to be the one who's got all the money. And you're like, wow, you're doing this not just in just folk music, you're doing it in like hip hop, which is one of the most capitalistic art forms.
Right. I mean, what are the boasts on this record, right? The boasts are in the song Sneaking In. They're about like how he used to get into movies and concerts for free.
Yeah.
Scam his way in, right? That's the boast. It's not, it's not how much money I have or anything, or look at my, whatever, not look at my material things. It's that. And I think, and he uses his position to like actually try to inspire people to make change. You could hear that on Underdogs, which is, I wouldn't say underrated, because, it's certainly one of the favorites on this album. Whenever Boots performs solo, he will often perform that song a cappella. Wow. I've seen him do it a couple times in a couple different situations.
Wow.
So that's, I think he views that song as somewhat of a crown jewel also. And that's, he's about, I think, empathy as a writer. Like if you look at that song, that started out as a letter to someone who he says had betrayed and badmouthed and tried to steal money from him and his father. Right. But that was the starting place, but then it ended up as, what could have led someone to do this for a tiny bit of money? What's the issue with the system? What kind of struggles are people caught in? And, at the end of the chorus, he adds this like, they'd tear this motherfucker up if they really loved you. And then he adds, and so would you, which doesn't rhyme with anything. It just kind of fills up some space, but it's meant to be, he says, a challenge to the listener, right? This idea of like making a change to the system and loving yourself are the same thing, that they're contained in each other.
Yeah. Wow.
So, every detail is so thought out, even these things that sort of sound like ad libs.
Yeah. Absolutely, man. It's just even deeper. Again, I can't think of a better word, but it just gets deeper and deeper the more and more you think about it. It's even to the point where it's so relevant today. Like Buster Ismology, like that track. Again, the funniness. What is it about Mickey D's here, Licky D's? And you're like, again, it's funny. That is fucking fun. There's no his rage or their rage. Pam and his rage aren't really like. Fist in the air, blow things up. They do have tracks like that, but on this album, they kind of hide it in this really vitriolic kind of, not vitriolic, but like kind of sharp-edged humor, if you know what I mean. And you're like, yeah, and then you hear that actually happened, like his Mickey D's, that the McDonald's thing is an actual story.
It's not a true story. Yep, for sure. Yeah, and it's such a great, it's such a great repurposing of hip hop's kind of stop snitching ethos, right? Obviously, as someone who spent a lot of time in the Tekashi story, wrote a whole book about him. Yeah, I have plenty of thoughts about snitching and whatever, like, and stop snitching and that whole movement and how it sits in hip hop. But the snitching here is snitching on, a revolutionary movement, snitching on fighting the managers, whatever, snitching on, in the final verse, he's sort of attacking, gangster rappers with no politics, basically.
Yeah.
So snitching by, not supporting revolution, essentially, snitching on a movement. Right. And I think that's just such a great way of flipping the stop snitching ethos. He does that on, I forget what song, it's not on this record, but he has a great line about like, I'm screaming pimps down, hoes up on another record, which is another way of flipping, a sort of hip hop trope into something revolutionary.
It's just ultimately more interesting doing it that way, isn't it? And I love Immortal Technique, absolutely love him, but he's so more straight edged and knowledge, info. Whereas the info on this is like, that made me think of Judas and the Messiah that I watched this year. And I was like, damn, like there's roots in the Bay Area, Marxists, Black Panthers, the idea that he's probably read, well, they all probably knew that story, and you're like, yeah, everyone knows that story. And then he puts it in this. And then also the intelligence of 79 Granada. I didn't even know this till I was researching for the pod, that's actually a Leninist movement in Grenada. And I was like, holy
right. It was so that's kind of funny. I'm sure you came across this. He meant it to be there is a car called a Granada, but he meant it to be a sort of sly reference to the socialist revolution in Grenada, the country.
Yeah.
But that actually happened in 1981, not 1979. So he messed up, and the reference was just totally lost.
Oh no! I looked it up, and it was
double meaning.
I've obviously not looked at it well enough. Oh right, double meaning. Right.
So, yeah. So he attempted a double meaning there, which he admits he sort of got wrong. But what can you do?
There you go.
I also want to talk for a second about his the vocabulary. I feel like.
Yes,
there's you just hear sort of so many different words that you don't hear on this stuff. I think even on the first song, right, he has that line that uses the word epidermis instead of skin, right? I feel my epidermis at its firmest just before a skirmish. And it's like a relatively throwaway line in the context of the song, but I feel like, taking the extra time to find the rhyme, to find the unusual word and fit it into the context is just like, is amazing.
That's the Shipment, isn't it? He says it on the Shipment, I feel.
The Shipment on the first track there. Yeah.
Another thing about Shipment, by the way, great opener. But
the mystical impression?
The mystical impression is incredible. The mystical impression is so on point. I'm so glad you went there with me. I was like, this is incredible. But I was listening to it and I was like, who the fuck in 1998? Remember, this is 1998 in hip hop. So, incredibly commercial. Who the fuck starts off with a harmonica like sample on their hip hop album? And then I was like, wow, it's incredible he did that. And then I started thinking, to be fair, I would not put it past both of them that they just thought, it's possibly one of the most socialist instruments is the harmonica. Like it really is. Like Woody Guthrie, I know Dylan was going in there, I know Phil Oakes. The folk movement in America generally relied heavily on that instrument. And I don't know if it's just me, but you can't help, as you've said, you read these things into it and you're like, they probably did think, let's start off with some, bluegrass, music. It's amazing. I thought it was incredible.
That song, by the way, has one of my favorite lyrics in the whole record on it, which again flips a hip hop trope of KRS by way of Belle Biv DeVoe line, right? Where he says you can't trust a big grip and a smile, and then he follows that with "and I slang rocks but Palestinian style."
That's my favorite lyric.
Is just like. Yeah, which is amazing. And also, again, takes a hip hop trope, I'm slanging rocks, I'm doing this, I'm the biggest drug dealer on the block. And it's sort of an implicit challenge to that, right? Well, I'm, what you should be doing is slanging rocks at cops,
Yeah, absolutely.
Or at the oppressor or whatever,
That's one of my favorite lines because it distills exactly that about the coup, which is it's just got all so subversive and yet so intelligent and sounds good. His flow is elastic at times on this album where you're like,
yeah, I mean, let's not forget also that speaking out in favor of Palestinians is risky today and was all the more risky, 20 odd years ago.
Absolutely. And risky, they're doing it risky. So it's obviously a risky message, risky album cover, risky album title. They did risky album covers later, but like,
risky album covers came later.
Yeah. But like,
have you got
it?
A little preview. I mean, I think it's actually was meant to be an ad for it, but yeah, you can, the infamous.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Damn. This is the riskiness of that, but also musically to tell a story like, I know we keep going back to Jesus to Pimp, breaking that track off, it just absolutely off to sing a lullaby that a mother sings to a kid. You're so beautiful. It hurts me to hear that now. And then to do a similar thing, but with Tony Braxton, I Shall Breathe again on breathing apparatus. And I was like,
I'm breathing apparatus.
And you're like,
which that was the first song they recorded for this record. That's why E-Rock was on it. E-Rock, who, was the second rapper in the Coup.
Yes.
Ended up getting a really good job and decided not to be a rapper anymore.
Amazing.
Sometime between, breathing apparatus and recording the rest of the album. Just for context, like sort of this record came out of a couple different things. Like after Genocide and Juice, Boots was like, I'm leaving music to be an organizer. And so he did that for a couple of years. The organization he put together, if he felt it kind of wasn't going the way he wanted.
Is this the Mau Mau Collective? Was it that one?
No, at that point, I think it was Young something. I'll have to look and get it. It was a separate organization. Mau Mau Collective was sort of his name for the musical crew of people who in music. So 1997, he hears Dead Prez for the first time and kind of gets re-inspired.
Wow.
And that made him realize that political hip hop could still be a viable thing. And he begins working on the music for Steal This Album.
Right.
So that's sort of
amazing.
like, and right around this time, he starts performing with a live band for the first time. He'd always used live musicians on his records, but he finally essentially found people who would work cheap enough that he could afford to use them as a live band. And I can't help but think that also had some influence on this album as well, by the time it was recorded in fall 98.
Yeah. And it was nice to hear. Well, I never got to see them live, but I see the live videos of DJ Pam, the Functress, and you're like, incredible. She must have been incredible, like, to see. And it's just interesting that them two, I know E-Rock kind of left, but how they worked together. I'm wondering what that relationship was like, because I don't know enough about her, you see. So
so the little bit, the little bit that I know about it, particularly about like the making of this record, was, Pam was a working DJ, right? So she'd be out in the clubs. She had to sort of keep abreast of what was going on. Boots never listened to the radio for whatever, didn't want to get distracted, whatever the reason. And so he would go to Pam and say, what's going on musically? What do I need to know? And she would say, oh, the tempos these days are faster or whatever. And, that would kind of go into thinking about, how to make music.
Interesting. Right. Because that's the element. I think there's an element to this crew. Like, they all had these kind of, just the flavor they bring is so unique compared to everyone else, and she plays a massive part, as does E-Rock back in the day. And I just wondered what that was like. But I remember when I first really, when I first rediscovered the Coup after the 9/11 party music thing, I didn't really know much about them, really. I didn't dig much back. And it was when I watched Superbad, mate. I'd watch Superbad. I was really high watching Superbad, and the party scene came on where they play Pork and Beef, and it's Fuck the Police, and Bill Hader is almost doing like a crip walk to this and I was like, I love Superbad so much, and I was like, what is Seth Rogen done it? What is this track? Bang. And then I remembered it. Oh, of course it's the Coup. And then you realize, what, their influence, it's huge. And we can talk about the film when it came out, like, he blew up, but there were so many people like you who were saying, well, no, Boots has always had this in him to do this, and people didn't even know it was an album before. What did you think to the film, man?
I loved the film. I thought it was incredible. Like I said, I recognized his sort of aesthetic in it, which, is not surprising. The surrealism, like you were saying, and the humor and the sort of ever-present politics, right? Yes. And that it always, he made it to make a point or several points about like the usefulness of collective action. And, it's a love letter to the Bay Area, like a lot of the Coup's work. I thought it was fantastic. I saw it, a couple times in the theaters when it came out, and I've watched it, several times since. I really thought it was great. And, from listening to the Sorry to Bother You album and, interviewing him around that time, it was the first time I interviewed him. Like, I was familiar with the rough outlines of the story.
Yeah.
The screenplay had been published sometime before. I hadn't actually read it until after I saw the movie, but the screen. So the idea had been out, the idea of like there's this telemarketer and with the white voice and whatever, like all of that had kind of been out there for a while, but I just thought it was, it was just a really, really great movie. And I look forward to seeing, what else happens in the film and TV realm.
I was going to ask you that. I'm interested to see what he does next. Like, yeah, it's just so interesting to see a man like, I was listening, when your YouTube algorithm kind of knows what you want. And I was just going on YouTube and it was just playing song after song, and E40's Practice Looking Hard came on, my man. And I've not heard that track in so long.
Yes.
Obviously Boots is in the video with Pac. And you're like, my head just went straight there where I was like, just imagine that super group though, E40, Boots and Pac, like, what would that sound like? Like, oh yeah, but yeah, I digress. Just to see a man.
Yeah, there's there is, I think there's some footage from that day that E40's Sister Sugar Tea shot that you can find on YouTube if you do some digging, just some behind the scenes of everyone hanging out and stuff. That is really fun.
Wicked. I shall check that out. Again, all these little hidden gems, discoveries in hip hop. I love it. But going into your work now, my man, because the album is amazing. But as I said before, you've had a hell of a 2021. You've been doing bits, the podcast game. You're doing, mate, all the stuff you're doing is great. And but your new book, Dummy Boy, Tekashi 6ix9ine, and the 9 Trey Gangsta Bloods. Tell me then about, because I've been reading the book. I'm not that well. I watched the documentary, so that's my knowledge level on Tekashi 6ix9ine, as well as, all the stuff that you read in the media. But for you, I wanted to know, one, how does it feel now? You've written a book, so it must be pretty nice to say that's an achievement. And two, for people like me who are outside of this world, what is it about this story that roped you in, like that got you really interested in it? What did you find fascinating about it?
Sure. So to start with, like, writing a book is just an amazing experience. I always assumed that was something my smart friends did, right? my real writer friends. And I never thought I could. So it's amazing that it's out. And, I'm so happy for, that Complex Health, they're presenting the book, and that, Kingston Imperial are the people who are publishing it. That's Marvis Johnson, who used to manage Prodigy. Wow. So it's great to have, someone with a foot in the book world and a foot in the rap world kind of put everything together. What dragged me into the story? I mean, man, you just couldn't, just a constant feeling of, did that really happen? Like, did he really do that? What do I think there's just so many points along the way when you're just struck dumb. Like, wait, did he really film did he really get his friends to commit an armed robbery in the middle of Times Square at 4 p.m., and then film it, and then send it to a DJ to put the film on the internet? Like, what? There's so many things that at first glance seem confusing and wild and amazing that I kind of needed to make sense of. And bit by bit over time, by talking to, scores of people around him and going to all the court things and whatever, like, I was finally able to really, I think, get a grip on, what was behind all of these sort of outrageous headline getting things. In a larger sense, I'll say also, it's a story of, the Trump era, right? It's a story of attention and the attention economy and these things your phones do to you with the constant, like, are enough people clicking on my thing, and do they like me, and needing this constant attention to sort of fill something inside and to get money, essentially to make your career. And I think you just get insights on all kinds of things, including the relationship between the rap world and gangs, which is often, elusive. Both sides will kind of hint at things without saying them. And here it's just all on the line. It's all open.
Yeah, he opened that world up. Your book opens that world up as well that I didn't know about, where I didn't even know there were blood factions on the East. I really did not know they were related to, or they're not related. They've got different relationships with the Crips and stuff. And just that world, the world building of, the book was incredible, man, because it gives you that, it really sets that out for you. And then how one man or boy could navigate all of that with some awful stuff. And yet, some just fascinating stuff where you're like, Jesus, like, to do what he's done, it says a lot about the American system as well. I feel like, a lot of the stuff that either he's forced to get into or he gets away with, it's just so much in there where I was like, wow, like, it's like a quagmire in a weird way. I was going to ask you, because in there he calls himself a troll who knows how to rap. Would you say that's a fair assessment of 6ix9ine?
I mean, I think he is a troll who, with some help, made some compelling music and some compelling videos. Mm-hmm. I think, certainly he does not hide the fact, and no one around him hides the fact that he had help with his lyrics. Mm-hmm. He had mentors and friends and people who were in the studio and, various folks, writing stuff for him. So, yeah, we can get into that, like how much, can you rap if someone else is writing your rhymes, whatever, does that count? Does that not? I think that's sort of, but I think overall, there was a time when the energy around him and the beats that he chose and the lyrics that he helped put together all worked and kind of meshed with his story and was compelling for a little while. I think after that, I think very quickly that pivoted in my mind to, once he was a star, it kind of became, well, I have to do these types of songs in order to stay a star. And I have to get these guest rappers in order to stay a star. And it quickly, to my mind, became kind of generic. Yeah. But before then, during his rise, there was at least some compelling music for me.
Oh, interesting. That SoundCloud wave that kind of came, he was in and came out. Mm-hmm. For you, it's been a while now since that's kind of been around, but for you, what is the lasting legacy of that era in your eyes, would you say?
Sure. So the thing about SoundCloud rap, I get into this in the introduction of the book, is it really threw people in music media, or at least, those of us at Complex, like I can't really speak anywhere else, for a loop, because, these guys didn't really need us, right? They could open their phone and talk to hundreds of thousands of people at a time. So what to them was the benefit of submitting to an interview where you can't control the question? Someone might ask you something uncomfortable. You might not know the answer, whatever. So trying to figure out how to cover this stuff was very difficult. And then also, a lot of people in that era had either rumored or confirmed kind of personal difficulties. Certainly Tekashi, even while he was coming up, there was a case that he caught when he was 18 involving sexual performance with a child, which I cover in the book, the details of that. And so you don't want to just write something that's going to say, hey, look at this new video, it's fantastic. You also don't want every article to start with, 4 paragraphs of caveats, because people's eyes are going to glaze over and no one's going to read it. Right. So I don't know if we fully solved that yet as a music media. Right. It's been 3 years or so. And I think people are still grappling with that. Do you cover artists with, objectionable things in their personal lives? How do you cover artists who would just as soon go on Instagram as show up for an interview? These are very real things that the SoundCloud wave sort of first really brought into the mainstream. And we're still grappling with that today. I think you can look at all of the stuff that, continually comes up, all the time. I mean, I think I don't need to enumerate the examples.
Yeah. It is absolutely interesting. But then what I love is that, yes, but there are other mediums now for us to try to dive in. And hence, like I said, your work in kind of true crime podcasts that marrying into the hip hop world. This book kind of does that as well. But then I also see like you writing pieces on like art rap. And I was like, the interesting thing is, like, even though there's so many of these eras, I'm glad there's someone out there who's still reporting on the music that's kind of a bit more current now. So yeah, big up on that art rap article. I really enjoyed that one. But
thank you. Yeah, that was thrilling to do because, most time, when I was writing features at Complex, like, there's always this thing of you want stuff that's in the Venn diagram of stuff you're actually interested in and stuff the audience is going to like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And sometimes it's a lot one way, sometimes it's a lot the other. That article was sort of completely stuff I am 100% into and listen to for fun. And my editor at the time was willing to take a chance on it. And I'm super glad he was. And this was like, years before the Alchemist album. And I'm just so glad to see sort of that whole scene really moving to the next level in terms of recognition, sort of spearheaded by the Arm & Hammer Alchemist record.
Oh, what a record. Yeah. I'm going to have to ask you some of your favorite records, man, of the year. Now you've said that. Are there any that spinning that you feel like we all need to be spinning?
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, Haram obviously is an absolutely incredible record.
Love it.
My gosh, now you put me on the spot.
I know.
Here.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to, but I just thought.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It happens. It happens.
Alchemist has dropped a few things, hasn't he?
Yeah, I have to say, I will. I think there's the new Curly Castro, also of that ilk.
Yes. Big up Curly Castro.
That I definitely liked a lot. I don't know, man.
What do you think Car? What do you think? I know regular listeners are going to be like, oh God, he's talking about Car again. But do you like Car from Brownsville?
I do. I love Car. I think he's amazing. I will say Rome Streets has been just an incredible thing for me. The record, I forget if it came out this year or not, but the record he did with
Muggs
was amazing. And he's done some stuff with Ransom. I also love Ransom. The series of EPs he's put out has been great.
The Muggs thing is interesting because Muggs to me is kind of fascinating, the music he's making. His music with Crime Apple this year has been incredible for me, and there's been loads of stuff. He's done some great stuff.
Absolutely.
But before we go, then I was actually going to ask you to go back to the book because obviously now you transitioned to be an author. You're like, I'd like to hear how you're finding that. What are the just difficulties you found there? And the second thing is like, what are the next stories that fascinate you, my man? Is there a common thread to the next move?
Okay. So, writing this book was, very challenging. You went through 3 whole drafts, essentially but I am thrilled with how it turned out. And I really wanted it to be the last word on this thing. Right. So definitely, I feel like this is sort of the end of what I have to say about it. Hopefully, I mean, who knows? Anything could happen. But I feel like all of the stuff that, I couldn't put into the podcast for various reasons that didn't fit into my articles I was writing at the time, piecemeal, like all of it is in the book, both in, and it just sort of tells the definitive story. And I'm just happy that it's out there and happy that it's done. And that all of the time I put into following this case, can actually be useful and help and inform other people.
Congrats on that. By
Other
the way.
things yeah, thank you. Other things I'm working on now. There's a podcast that's out now where, as we're speaking, 5 episodes in out of 8. It's the second season of Infamous. The first season was about Tekashi.
Mm-hmm.
The second season now is about the rapper YNW Melly, who's a Florida rapper who's accused of killing his 2 best friends.
Wow.
He's actually still in jail as we speak, awaiting trial for it. You can find that on Spotify. Just, search Infamous.
For sure.
So, on the finishing stages of that, readying the last handful of episodes for release as we speak.
Yeah.
So that's been great. And I don't want to say too much about there is a follow-up book planned that I'm hard at work on. And I would say, hopefully about 75, 80% done with a first draft.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to go too into detail about it, but I'll say that it looks at other issues around rap and policing that I did not get into in the Tekashi book, kind of the wider spectrum of rap and policing. The Tekashi case was sort of anomalous in a lot of ways, in that, like, it was a federal case. It was done in the Southern District of New York, which you listeners might not know is kind of like the crown jewel of the U.S. justice system.
Right.
Because it includes Manhattan. A lot of high profile cases are there. All of the Trump related cases are always there. And, Jeffrey Epstein and all of these crazy, high profile federal cases are always are in there. The judge, I think, took a lot of time to figure out how culpable all of the defendants were. You did this, so you deserve 5 years. You did this, so you deserve 20 years. And is time in federal prison a great punishment for someone? I would argue no, but if that's where you're at, if that's what your job tells you to do, I think he did a reasonable job in terms of determining culpability. He had some blind spots, I think, that I get into in the book, but overall, I think, you are dealing with people who were involved in some real crimes.
Yeah.
So I wanted to look at more kind of systemic issues around rap and policing and how that works and the history of it. So that's what I'm working on now.
That's fascinating, man. I don't know if there's like a common theme you go to, but I do know when I read your stuff, it does really transport you there. And the point is, it's a story that is bigger than just the characters. It is a story about the system and about America and about hip hop. So everyone do go check out that book. It's really, just a great read so far. So, and the podcast as well, man. I need to dive in. I don't listen to enough podcasts. After doing a podcast that takes so much time up, it's the annoying thing is I don't actually get to listen to any now. So I'm really annoyed.
I hear you. When I was putting out I was putting out a show a week or a show every 2 weeks, with the Cypher, it definitely cuts into your, the last thing you want to do is like, oh, another podcast where people talk about rap. That says, sign me up. Sounds great.
Exactly. All the podcasters to this, thank you for listening, because I know it can be a slog. So all the podcasters, big yourselves up, man. But as well as yourself, man, and I love the fact you're still doing that as well, because it can, text is great, but for me, it just the audio and the cipher, and how I've said this before about you, man,
I mean, look, the Cypher was great. I am very proud of it. The archives will be free for as long as I can, make that happen.
It's amazing.
This is different, obviously, and this kind of form of narrative storytelling that I've stumbled onto has been great. Like you get, time to really delve into things and interview people and put stories together and, get things edited and really try to tell one story over the course of 6 episodes like we did with Pop Smoke, or 8 episodes like we did with Tekashi and Melly. The Pop Smoke podcast, by the way, is called Complex Subject Pop Smoke, which I definitely obviously recommend.
Absolutely.
Recorded it and wrote it, but I think it really, we talked to just so many people who really knew him, and I think you just get a real different perspective on his whole life and career. Especially how important he was specifically to his neighborhood, right? To Canarsie, Brooklyn.
That's what I was going to say. Especially the community vibe to this, especially the Tekashi thing. I got an idea what Brooklyn what it must have been like to grow up in those areas, including the documentary that came out as well. But I was also thinking for our podcast, obviously 90s heads, a lot of old school hip hop heads may just ignore Pop Smoke, may ignore Tekashi 6ix9ine, but I feel like when you listen to these podcasts and read these books, there's a lot of relatability to hip hop as generally, where it's just good to know what's happening with the culture that we're all in, you know, and how other people keep getting into the culture as well, and what their access points are. If it's Gummo, you know, wow, you know, it's not EPMD, it's Gummo. Like, how are you going to now change hip hop in the next 10, 20 years? Because you're part of it. And I find that what you guys are doing, what a lot of other great content makers out there are doing, is recording it for that, and then we can look back as an evolution and be like, wow, just I don't know if I'm doing that.
Thank you. And I think, you know, that there is a connection to kind of the 90s, early 2000s in this book, that there's a kind of subtle contrast throughout the book of Tekashi and Jim Jones, because Jim Jones knew all of, you know, many of the people around Tekashi. He'd been friends with them for years or decades. They're in his, you know, Bird Gang group. They're in his videos. They're, you know, whatever. And there's a sort of implicit contrast in the book between how Jim Jones deals with the intersection of rap and the hip hop world and the 9 Trey Gangsta Bloods, and how Tekashi deals with it. Jim deals with it in this very, you know, more traditional way of, I'll hint at things, I'll joke, I'll say things, I'll do ad libs on records, like I'll say things but not say them, right? Yeah. Whereas Tekashi is just like, I'm a 9 Trey gangster, you know, that's it. There's no subtlety, there's no double meaning.
There really is, you know. Yeah.
It's just out front from the word go.
Yeah, absolutely. What a way to put it. But Shawn, man, everyone go check out that book, go check out the podcast, go check out the Coup. I mean, if any music needs lifting up, it's the Coups, man, and art like this needs to be lifted up. So I hope we gave it some shine and got you guys. One thing I realize is people don't actually listen to a lot of these albums before we talk about them, so it's quite nice that they go back and listen to them. They're like, oh, I didn't know this was even, you know, what this is about. So I'm glad that we get to do that for a few people. But man, thank you again for jumping on the pod. It's always an honor to have someone like yourself on. But Shawn, before you go, the last great piece of music you heard, could be old, could be new, just the last great piece, and feel free to check Spotify.
The last great piece of music that I heard. Let me actually jump back into Spotify and check here. So I just finished reading. I was lucky enough to get a galley of Dan Charnas's upcoming biography of Dilla.
Dilla time.
Which is Dilla Time. Amazing book. Your listeners should buy it when it, you know, pre-order it now, get it when it comes out in February.
For sure.
And so that inspired me to listen to a compilation I didn't even know existed, which is of Dilla's stuff on Delicious Vinyl, which was, you know, a label he worked with a lot early in his career.
Yes.
It's called J Delicious, the Delicious Vinyl Years.
Wow.
And I didn't even know it existed until yesterday, but it has, you know, all of these early tracks from The Far Side and Brand New Heavies and all this stuff. And there are instrumentals on, you know, it's the songs and then followed by the instrumentals. So I was listening to the instrumentals and really just trying to soak in, you know, hear it through the years of, you know, try to take in some of the stuff that Dan talks about in the book in terms of Dilla's relationship to time, obviously, you know, in the title, but that's sort of one of the big themes of the book of, you know, why he was unique as a producer. I won't even attempt to do it justice by paraphrasing.
But it's beautiful.
You guys will just have to read it. But
it's beautiful that I love Dilla, and we've started a Patreon and we've just done a Dilla series. So this is gonna I've got to get that book. I've got to get that book, man, for sure. But Shawn, thank you again. I'm now going to go listen to some Dilla, and as I say all the time, man, the doors are open anytime you want to jump on the next book or whatever. We're always honored to have you on, man. So yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Cam. It's such a pleasure to be on.
Wicked. You're right. You go chill with your cat. I see your cat doing, you know, little things.
Joey's around here somewhere. It's feeding time. So they know it's 4 p.m. on the East Coast, which means they're eating, and now it's 4 406, and so they're giving me the stink eye over here.
Love that. Wicked, man. But yeah, you take it easy and good luck with everything, man. Good luck.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Peace.